Mav, let's open up with the PlayStation conversation because again, I do want to save the Switch 2 or the Xbox slash Nintendo conversation for the back end of the show. Again, I'll read it verbatim. This was pulled directly from the post from Culture Crave, who again is one of the trades that reports usually on entertainment, but more so film. And they've been very busy with what's been going on with PlayStation because at the CES 2025, all we saw was TV, anime, a new car, and some film. We didn't see or hear anything about games. And first of all, we were all shocked, Mav, to know that Shuhei Yoshida was leaving PlayStation after 31 years. He wasn't retiring; he just was leaving PlayStation, and this led to a lot of speculation as to why he left. Now, he dropped some really big pieces of information regarding his thoughts and his theories of the company. When he was pressed about PlayStation VR 2.0, he laughed and basically said, let's move on, meaning that it is probably a massive black eye for PlayStation as a company. But I think where I want to start this off with is I don't mind criticizing Xbox when the criticism is worthy of the conversation, right? Unfortunately, though, when we have those conversations, people get mad because some people do not want to see that there's something wrong. And at times there has been stuff wrong at Xbox. How they market Game Pass is still not fixed. How sometimes they step on rakes by speaking out of turn. Sometimes they're too forward with their thinking. And, that happens in business. But I think one of the things that we can admit is for at least the last 2+ years, and I guess I'm going all the way back to 2023 on this, folks. Xbox has been delivering on the games front. Now, maybe the services like cloud isn't 4K yet; they're working on it. Maybe you wanted, like myself, wanted an Xbox handheld, but that's coming next year apparently. For this year, everything that you have, regardless of whether it is a Lenovo, whether it is a ROG, whether it is a Steam Deck, by the end of the year, it's going to run and look like an Xbox, where, of course, this whole conversation of this is an Xbox came from, and a lot of people didn't like that as well. But if there's one thing that has been told to us by games media, and more so the PlayStation community, it's all about the games, ladies and gentlemen. It's the games that matter, right? It's supposed to be about the games, not film, not TV, not anime, and certainly not automobiles. Well, Xbox has been delivering games. Now, 2022 was a flat year for them. We all know that. But if you go to 2023, Mav, they had a bomb of a year. And I mean a bomb in a good way. Then 2024 comes along, and maybe not every game is for you, but they released a plethora of games across numerous genres, which is why Xbox Game Pass and Xbox Game Studios is, in my opinion, the clear leader when it comes to that. It's offering experiences across a multitude of platforms, and I think that's incredibly important, especially for a service like Game Pass, because you might be a dude bro shooter, but maybe you used to play RTS games back in the days, and you play something on there, you're like, whoa, wait a second. I didn't know that this was Xbox owned, and I'm enjoying this. And that happens. You love RTSs, and that's a great genre. Not so much for me, but a lot of people dig it. So where I'm going with this, why I'm been so long-winded to bring it finally back around to PlayStation, is it's about the games, isn't it? And they have not been delivering in the games department for a couple of years now. As a matter of fact, they have really taken a step back of what you would expect a market leader to look and act like. And this can go all the way back to 2023, where they cut their produced shows down to practically nothing. Every time they did have an event, it was lackluster at best. We've been hearing about the super secret show that was happening for the last 36 months. Still nothing. The best thing that they have going for them is Ghost of Yotai this year, and that game looks amazing, but it's one title. And of course, you know what? I forgot. Baby Steps. That is going to be Game of the Year 2025 at the Game Awards. There's no doubt about it. I jest, folks. But I just want to read Shuhei Yoshida's commentary. And I think there is a lot to unpack here. And I think that the games media, if this was Xbox, there would be 5 articles from everybody under the sun about how terrible this is. And this is terrible, folks. Basically what Shuhei Yoshida is saying is that if you want new games, you have to support PlayStation by buying remasters. I think that is a terrible precedent. I don't even understand. I can't believe he actually said that publicly. Like, that may be an internal memo. Hey, we got to sell more remasters to be able to afford X game. But to put that out in the ether, that to me is wild. Now, maybe he did that because he's on his way out the door, but I think that logic is not good. And I think that the games media has a responsibility to report on the news the same way that if this was Xbox, Mav, they would have shred them to pieces. They would have started quoting mismanagement that have been calling for Sarah's job, for Phil's job, for Matt Booty's job. And what we've seen is literally nothing pushing back against this. I want to get your hot take on it.
Yeah, I mean those comments specifically were pretty crazy because it goes down to like think back all the way to when we found out that Factions was canceled and the reasoning why. Like Naughty Dog doesn't want to transition into a multiplayer studio. Like we can't do both. So if we do this, it's just going to be that we're going to lose our identity and just become this multiplayer games of service live service studio, and that's all we can do, right? Well, like, if that was Microsoft on the other side, right? They hire support studios, they expand the studio, they do more things so that way they can do both. As we've seen with Xbox with all the studios uh that they've have been acquiring, they're expanding to multiple projects. They support them with support studios and all these other kind of things. Well, what we find out is PlayStation ain't got that money and they don't know how to do those kinds of games, right? So that they had started doing all these games of service games and all this other kind of stuff, and it's like, well, crap. Well, we can't do both. We asked all of our studios to start doing this, and well, it's going to take us longer than we thought, and our development is in development hell. And we can't do our single player games either because all of our other games are tied up in these games. All of our developers are tied up in these never ending horrible projects that we greenlit. So they started transitioning away, started canceling as going back to like a year and a half ago or so, where they canceled 6 of the 12 and then now 2 more, right?
Yep.
Well, I mean, Concord actually launched, but it was posthumously canceled. I mean,
11
it
days
was
later.
yeah.
It's probably, Mav, not to kind of rip off the band-aid here, but I think it's safe to admit that it's probably one of the worst launches in modern gaming history, going all the way back to when ET came out on the 2600. That's how bad that launch was.
Oh, I mean, it's probably is the worst launch in gaming history with the amount of costs that went into it versus how long it lasted and the players that they were able to get to even try the game.
They sold
Definitely,
25,000 copies across Steam and PlayStation 5. Think about that
yeah,
for a second, folks.
that's a disaster
Yeah.
of epic proportions. Like, game was thought to be their next major franchise, like their Star Wars. It's just crazy when you think about it. And what I think it was Grub that said is that these other 2 games were canceled also as a result of what happened with Concord, right? That they went through and were like, okay, these other games that we got, like which ones we're gonna reassess everything, and then they got to those 2, and it's like, no, we're canceling them. So it gets to the point of so where are we at with PlayStation's roadmap and pipeline, right? We have some games that we know we're coming to look forward to. Ghost of Yotei, Wolverine will be 2026. They're still publishing Death Stranding 2, even though that'll end up being a timed exclusive like the first one was.
Yep.
Um, so we're left with this, okay, turnaround projects, remasters and remakes, right? And PC ports. Spider-Man 2 happening again to PC now. More remakes and PC ports on the horizon as well. Will definitely be a thing. I mean, they even remade Until Dawn.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they're really reaching for the barrel here. I'm just saying, like, what's the purpose of even remaking or remastering that game? Like, it would look, it was fine. It looked
It's probably
fine.
one of the
It,
best looking PlayStation 4 games, right there with the Order 1886, which again, a lot of people overlook. Those games are gorgeous. I get it where they wanted to kind of get a couple of sales, but they were selling that game at full boat. That wasn't even like a discounted title.
yeah,
They could have easily said, "Hey, listen, we're going to remaster this. We're going to add some, some K's to the visuals, and $10. Pay $10 for the upgrade." People would have lined up because that game is a phenomenal game. I don't know if you've played it, and maybe a lot of people don't play horror and they skipped it, but Until Dawn is a phenomenal experience. And again, this is one of those rake stepping moments that what I was referring to. This is them overreaching, like you just said, or overextending. And in my opinion, Mav, and I'm going to give the mic back right back to you, is abusing the goodwill of PlayStation gamers.
yeah. That one they take a page out of Nintendo, right? I think they see, okay, Donkey Kong Country Returns sell it again $60. They can do that. Well, we can do these kind of things too, right? Which is Nintendo always gets away with this stuff too, which is crazy. But besides that fact, um, yeah, they need this money. Like Shuhei was, he had no reason not to be candid now, right? And he when he was doing his interview, and he was like, if if gamers want these more games with these IPs, and they want new big franchises, you better buy the remakes and remasters and the PC versions also, right? So they want you to double dip too. Think about that. Like on Xbox, you buy the game, you get free updates, next gen updates, you get dual entitlement, on PC and console. You get to play it in the cloud also, like all these different things, right? For the first party lineup. And PlayStation is like, no, we want you to buy the game once. We want you to buy it a couple years later when we remaster it. Then we want to buy you to buy it again a few years after that when we remake it. But also in the meantime, at some point within probably around a year and a half after launch, or maybe even sooner, we're going to make a PC version. And if you want the best version possible, then you're going to go buy that. It's like that's how they're maximizing their franchises. Oh, then we'll make a movie based on it, then we'll make a show based on it, even if it's something that's warranted or not, right? Because we're maximizing the value of our IP. That's just basically what Sony is doing now. Now it comes to, like you said, the detriment of the gamers because they sold gamers on those tentpole franchises. This is the reason why to go buy a PlayStation. This is the reason why you need one, because we make these massive tentpole games that nobody else can make. Right? We are the ones that determine when the generation starts. We are the ones that know how to do things right in gaming. They get the experiences you can't get anywhere else. But they didn't tell anybody, oh, you might only get maybe one a year. We're gonna fill it in with the rest. Is gonna be remasters and remakes, third party deals, second party deals, all these other kind of things that, oh yeah, yeah, the competition used to do that. They used to get criticized for it, right? But you know what? Times have changed. We're doing it now. We know the right way to do it. So we're gonna make Silent Hill 2 exclusive. We're gonna go and get the publishing rights to a game called Stellar Blade. We're gonna go ahead and do a deal for Rise of the Ronin and make sure that that one's exclusive. Hey, we'll slide some money into the table for Black Myth Wukong. Make sure that they develop first for PlayStation and ignore even optimizing for Xbox. That way they can't release it. And we're just gonna keep doing that. We're gonna get our games. People don't care anymore. They just care about exclusives. They just care about exclusives. But what we won't tell you is, oh yeah, those are probably all going to be timed exclusive. Just like the Xbox games that are going to PlayStation. Yeah, because those are just deals we're making with companies. Those are probably going to Xbox too, but we're not going to allow them to say it. Sign on the
Yeah.
dotted line. You
Yep.
can't say this. Instead, you get your one true exclusive, maybe a year, and the big tentpole franchise that we have. But don't worry. Also, for you PC players, it'll come probably 6 months to a year and a half later, somewhere in between there. So it's not really, not anymore, right? But we're still gonna sell the brand identity of the PlayStation being the best place to play these games. It's really funny how they can trick the mindset of everybody to how they are doing something different than everybody else, right? Whereas you see the moving in the same direction, uh, like Xbox was last generation. It seems like they're kind of more so in that place, moving forward, trying to figure out how to get their games in more people's hands. And games media doesn't touch on it, man. Games media killed Xbox for delivering a few games in 2022, right? They had Pentiment, they had Grounded 1.0, they had As Dusk Falls, they had exclusives like High on Life, things like that. They got absolutely crucified, right? Well, in a year of 2024 where they only pretty much PlayStation had pretty much one or two first party games and then was filled in with third party deals. Absolutely great year for PlayStation.
Yep.
Celebrate it. What an amazing, great year for PlayStation. Oh, we only have maybe one or two games to look forward to next year. Oh, it doesn't matter. You know, they had Astrobot.
Game of the year.
Yeah, they had Astrobot. We're
Yes.
good. You know, like yeah, they had a bad year. What do you mean? Astrobot. But what they don't tell anybody is the gamers don't play those games. Like I think Astrobot sold maybe 2.5 million copies or whatever, right? Which is fine. I'm not trying to knock it for that, but that's not why the brand is popular is because of Astro Bot. It's just the de facto casual box, and that's why people ignore all this other stuff about the gaming news, about the cancellation of games, about the uh, live service games moving away, other projects getting started, and all this other kind of stuff. The real reason, just be honest, they don't care because they don't care about the PlayStation exclusive games in the first place. It's not why they buy a PlayStation.
No, only the hardcore like us do. People in the chat, we got over 525 people watching. We're hardcore gamers, so we own multiple platforms and we look for these exclusives. But the people, the gamers that Mav are talking about, are 85% of sales from PlayStation 5 are the casual market. And I'm saying 85%, you think, well, that's kind of high. It's actually not. As hardcore, minority, because that's what we are. Hardcore are the minority. We're not the majority. Maybe years ago, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, hardcore was the loudest and probably equated for a bunch, maybe even more than half. But casual audience is buying the PS5. Why? Well, they probably grew up with a PlayStation 4 or 3. And more importantly, it's the most popular console, which means it's the cool console. Are they right in saying so? Well, I mean, again, that's an opinion. But the truth of the matter is that PlayStation is one of the most recognizable brands in gaming. I mean, that's just a fact. They're up there with the GTAs. When you say GTA or Madden, people are like they look. When you say PlayStation, it's like when I was growing up. When I was playing on my Master System, my mom would tell me, "Get off your Nintendo already. Go do your schoolwork, kid." Right? That's just what it was because Nintendo was the Nintendo. But PlayStation is the most popular brand for a multitude of reasons, and they've earned that position, folks. They have earned it. They've had unbelievable records being broken left, right, and center with their consoles. That's not a mistake. They're in first place for a reason. But do they belong there anymore is the question, Matt. And I don't know if we're going to get that answer.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I have hope for Intergalactic when it hits. You
Looks
know,
great.
I think Ghosts of Yote is probably going to be great. But like looking for one big game a year from the tentpole first party studios is just not. I don't know. It pales in comparison to what Xbox is doing, or even what Nintendo's going to do. Right? Like I don't see how you can ask people to spend so much money in the ecosystem buying these expensive boxes and at using your brand identity of your amazing franchises that you can only get on PlayStation, but you're only giving people maybe one a year. And it used to be a criticism of Xbox not having enough, a criticism of Xbox relying on third party and second party deals. And now it's become an accepted thing with PlayStation because less is more is actually words that have been used. It's about the quality, not the quantity. Let me tell you, Xbox is going to be delivering both. They already have been. The second half of 2024, we were loaded with good games. Really good games. And like you said, Boom, a multitude of genres and variety. Now, some of them you may overlook some, right? Because they aren't necessarily for you, but they're for somebody, right? And more of that's happening in 2025 with lots of variety in the genres, lots of variety in the kinds of games we're getting, but all year long. I mean, we're about to have another showcase.
Yep.
We know the issues going on at Sony because they refuse to give us showcases, man. We went
Yep.
another year last year without an actual showcase. Like, how can anybody be like, oh yeah, the PlayStation's doing great, but yet they refuse to even have a show where they actually talk about their games? They have their state of plays and stuff, but that's like a lot of third party stuff, a lot of random little things. Like Xbox had Gamescom, TGS, Summer Game Showcase, Developer Direct, and also a couple of partnership shows mixed in there in between,
Yep.
talking about new games coming to the platform. Meanwhile, people say Xbox is dead when they're the only ones actually out there revealing games for the platform.
Yep.
PlayStation's like, well, we can maybe find a one to put at this thing. Maybe we'll at Keeley's we'll give them something. Well, Intergalactic, yeah, we're finally ready to reveal that. What year? I don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know what year. Maybe 2026, maybe 2027. I guess. I don't know. We got to see how it's doing. We got to see how soon we can get their live service game team dissolved and move them into a first party or single player game team. I don't know. It's just like crazy what's been going on there behind the scenes, and it gets just like glossed over and overlooked. Imagine if Xbox shifted almost their entire development prowess into going one direction, and in the middle of a generation said, oops, never mind, we're gonna restart it all over again. Like that's basically what happened. Like that's really what happened, and it's like, oh, it's probably for the best. This was a good move by PlayStation. I'm glad that they did that. How about you talk about the fact that they fucked up so bad? Somebody, anybody, just talk about the fact of what happened. How did they allow this to happen? How did they allow the mismanagement to take place for all of these years? Jim Ryan saw the shit hitting the fan, and he hit the road. He was like, "I screwed up.
He got the F out of Dodge. What happened?
Do? Oh my god, we had our first showcase in years, and everybody hated it. Everybody hated my games. They said it was the worst showcase ever in PlayStation history, and this was my show. I suck. Oh, we got to cancel 6 of these games, and then I'm gonna get out of here. Oh wait, we'll leave Concord because Herman loves that one. Oh, yeah, that one's still going to be great. Concord, Herman loves it.
It's his Star Wars. It's PlayStation Star Wars.
But secretly,
I'm just saying.
My name's Jim Ryan, and I know Concord's going to suck, so I'm getting the heck out of here, right? So I bail. Watch from the sidelines. Concord launches. Whoops. I guess we should have actually canceled that one, too, when we canceled the other 6 of them suckers, right? Well, we'll see what happens in the future. I'm glad I got out while I could. Herman, good luck, buddy. Hiroki Totoki, fix this. Shuhei, retire. Bye. Yeah, I should have listened to you when you were here, man. I'm sorry I demoted you. My bad.
Demoted him to the basement.
I should have listened. Sorry, Shuhei. Man, it's chaos, dude. Chaos.
Look, I'll say this. I get it. Gaming's a huge business. Connections, especially for these websites, they matter, right? The click ratio keeps the lights on. But I don't think that you have to do what they did to Xbox over the last, decade, right? Just completely shit on them whenever you got an opportunity. Oh, man, we need clicks. You know what? Game Pass not making money. It's not sustainable. Colin Moriarty is the one that you were talking about regarding the less is more. I don't need 3 or 4 games a year. Just give me one. Oh, really? Oh, okay. Not a problem. He's big media, right? That guy's got a company worth a lot of money. That's big media. I don't think, Fuzzy Belvedere, that you have to quote unquote pile on the rabbit. Any old school cats in the chat remember that episode with it's Bugs Bunny episode from way back in the days. Only old people know what I'm talking about, right? Don't pile on the rabbit, right? You don't have to pile on PlayStation and completely do a 180 and just shit all over PlayStation to get your point across. You can, though, do investigative journalism, which is something that you're taught in school. You're taught to ask the hard questions. And nobody in games media, and that means all of them, folks, until I start seeing, the articles from Insider Gaming and Game Rant and IGN and GameSpot and Kotaku and the rest of these rag mags that will actually get out there and ask the big questions. This just goes to show you that no matter what Sony does, they are okay. They have not done anything wrong. There's no reason to ask the questions. There's no reason for course correction. But the minute Xbox does something different, and look, I'll be the first one. I've said this before, and I will reiterate it right now. In the start of 2023, I was not a fan of them moving games over to PlayStation. When that rumor came out, I'm like, I don't like this idea, but I understand why I came from that spot. I'm an old man, and I don't like the idea of cross-pollination. But as we started, moving throughout the year, we got to 2024, and we, more games went over, and more games are going to be over, and we're going to talk about what that in the second half about what's going over to Nintendo. I had realized, and it wasn't an epiphany, folks. It's just a reality. If I don't move with the times, they're going to leave me behind. Now, granted, I still don't like it, but I understand the big business of it. And I think that if you look at what happened in 2024, as many magnificent experiences that we got as gamers across the board, I don't care what platform you're on, one of the biggest, most driving conversations that people refuse to have is how many human beings lost their jobs. How many studios were closed? How many projects were abandoned? When you abandon a project, you don't need that team. If that team isn't ready to go somewhere else, that team is gone. Okay? These are human people. These are people that make our games that we love so much. So again, I'm not saying that you should be empathetic to it. I am, because I understand that I'm very, very lucky to be in a position where I can be retired, still pay my rent, still have insurance and vision and dental, still go to the store and buy groceries and talk about gaming. I'm very fortunate. I don't do this for a paycheck. I do this for a hobby. It's a big difference for someone who's in gaming. So when you see all of these studio closures, now again, granted, these 2 projects that Sony canceled last week, are those studios safe? Are they going to be open or closed? Because there's a story that's going out that's floating around that they didn't find out about the studio closing the game until it made it to the press, until we were talking about that. Think about that. You're on the team at PlayStation, and you learn from watching someone's podcast that your game is being shut down. Really, PlayStation? Where's the articles for that? I don't know. Fuzzy, I'm expecting a rant because I think that this is a conversation that really started with Shuhei Yoshida telling PlayStation gamers outright to their faces that if you want PlayStation new IP, you're going to have to suck it up, and you're going to have to support PlayStation by remasters and rebuying on PC. That is an awful sentiment. Now, again, I think of Shuhei as a gem of this industry, and I think he was being forthcoming for sure. I don't think there was any facetiousness whatsoever. But the truth of the matter is if that is your plan, if that is Sony PlayStation's plan moving forward, Could someone in the audience please tell me how long or how many of these remasters you have to buy before they start work on another new IP? That is a question that needs to be asked, and no one's asking it here today. We're doing that. Let's get your thoughts.
Man, okay, so let's go back in time for a little bit. There was a little game called Scalebound. I think it was unveiled in 2015, 2016. And because of some mismanagement at Platinum, it was canceled. Phil took the blame. We kind of know what happened. They took the money and used it to release other games on other platforms. And the gaming media, I would say, even to this day, every now and then you'll see an article about that game. Like, let's be real, that was over 8 years ago, and they still talk about it. But the gaming media won't talk about Concord. It's like, nope, mum's the word. It's dead and buried. Wait, no, it never happened. It never was. It was a mistake, and we erased it from history. People talk about Redfall, or the gaming media talked about Redfall, and they still talk about how Xbox mismanaged Bethesda, blah blah blah. Guess what? You can still play Redfall. I don't know. I'd rather have a game that you could still play. Sure, unfortunately, a part of the studio was closed that released that game, but Concord, you can't even play the game. Studio's closed, and now a lot of other games that were in that same vein are being canceled. Do you not think those studios are going to be closed? Where's the articles on it? Jason Schreier, I'm looking at you because you're the one that likes to talk about Halo or 343. And Bungie's on fire even to this day, and nobody seems to say anything bad about it. Whether it's the HR issue with the guy spending the employee retention money on cars and then inviting one of the female employees to check them out, like, hey, look, isn't this cool? I got all these cars. Can we go on a date or whatever? And no, there's no stories about that. There's a page 10 type of article about the guy that was released from the company and was under contract because he did some other HR things behind the scenes. But yeah, they brush that under the rug. They brush a lot of that stuff under the rug because when it's Sony, it must be what's supposed to be. But when it's Xbox, like, they still haven't let go the unveiling of the TV in 2013. Like, did we not just see CES 25? Not like a week ago or so, or a couple of weeks ago, where we saw a Sony roadmap for movies and anime, not for games. The only thing about games that was mentioned is that, we've had them for 30 years, but that's as far as it went. They talk about a car that people that are paying attention to electric cars are laughing at. It's $80,000 for the base car, and it's 5 years behind everything else that's out on the market. Whether you're looking at Tesla or Hyundai or anything, it's so far behind. It's even behind Honda, who they're partnered with, who has their own electric vehicles that were shown at that same show. Where's the Sony dominance in TV land as far as like their electronics and things? They've fallen behind Samsung years ago and LG and all the other brands. So if other forms of media see that Sony has fallen off hard in other areas and they're willing to talk about it, why is the gaming media so afraid? Is it they're afraid that they'll get their free games that they review cut off? I mean, yeah, Sony does do that. If you say anything nasty about or less than stellar about their games, you're off the list for the next review copies.
Yep.
And let's be real, that's part of the reason why there's that Xbox tax. Like, people want to say it's not real, but yet the gaming media asks for PlayStation copies over Xbox copies. They could be in an office where they have all the platforms, PC, Xbox, PlayStation. What do? They request PlayStation. Why? Because that's their preferred brand. I get it. It's the popular brand. And for the longest time, until what was it, like early PS4 time, I was on the PlayStation bandwagon. I skipped PS2 because I went to PC, but I was always holding Microsoft accountable on their PC end of things where I felt their software wasn't gaming friendly, whether you're looking at Windows ME or Vista. Looking back at it, Microsoft is usually ahead of the power curve as far as whether we need to upgrade hardware, which at the time, there was a big debate as far as how the motherboards and Intel chips were set, and they were kind of nudging them into having it where everybody has to upgrade. Looking back at it, was not the best time frame, but they were always ahead in trying to further the industry. Same thing happened in 2013. How many of us would love to own our digital games or be able to sell them or trade them or will them to your kids or whatever? That was kind of the whole thing that people were against. Yeah, the messaging wasn't the greatest. But looking back at it, we would probably kill to have those features because now we're always online anyway, and we don't get any of those benefits that we were so against the already online thing. So now with Microsoft looking at, moving beyond the console, obviously they see something that others aren't willing to either admit or may recognize at this time. Much like when Microsoft was looking at the whole digital first kind of deal at the beginning of the Xbox One generation. Maybe it's that Sony now is kind of cornered themselves into a box where they have these outlandish budgets on games that now, because they charge an extra $10 over what they did the previous generation, don't sell as well. Like, we're looking at their most recent games. What is it? Astrobot was only 1.5 million copies sold. Like, I think at this point, we need to realize that maybe the extra $10 affected the market more so than us as the enthusiasts. The enthusiasts that are like, oh, I'll pay 80 or I'll pay 100. That's great. But not everybody's going to do that. It's much like with me being in the auto industry. People buy the V6s or the 4 cylinders so the ones that want the V8s can have them, because if those don't sell, they don't have the money to make the V8s. That's the way it's been for Mustangs, Camaros, and Challengers for a while. Well, actually more so the Mustang Camaros, because the Challenger was a more recent entry in 08. But all in all, you have to have it where everybody is willing to be on board and buying these games. And with Sony and Yoshida saying that you have to buy the remasters so you can get the new games, that's telling you, hey, spend more money. The same thing that we probably scoffed at Phil about when he was saying at the business update last year about how you can either monetize your existing customer base or you can find other customers to bring into your ecosystem. PlayStation is the ones that monetize their customer base. That's why you pay the extra $10 for the upgrades, whether it's visual or haptic feedback. Sure, there's costs and expense in the programming for the haptics and whatnot, but didn't you just pay $500 plus for the console that comes with the haptic controller? Like, excuse me, am I wrong? When you buy a car that comes with heated seats, do they charge you every day when it's cold outside for you to heat your butt? No. I mean, well, BMW did that, but that was mainly for people that were leasing the car as opposed to buying it outright with that feature. But they were willing to charge you an extra $10 to use something you just paid for. And there were people that were fine with it. I wasn't, because I look at it as idiocracy at that point for the fact that I bought the system. Don't charge me to use the system I just bought. Like, that's ridiculous to me. But what do I know? But in the grand scheme of things, Sony will nickel and dime their customer base more so than focus on expanding their customer base. Now they're trying to appeal to the PC crowd, and they've had their stumbles. They've had their rake moments with like things like Helldivers 2. They've definitely figured out, or F around and find out kind of deal, that you can't just make it so you have to link your account or you can't access the game, or even sell the game to areas where you can't link your account. It like Sony is so far behind trying to figure out how to, attract the PC crowd that I don't know if they're ever going to really solidify how to do that and be happy with their, data metrics and things like that to be able to, either monetize those PC customers or at least keep track and tab on what appeals to them. And as we see, that window, that 6 months to a year and a half or whatever, keeps shrinking each time. Sure, some of it's for their games as a service games, but their single player games are going to wind up being closer and closer to the point where at some point they're going to wind up doing day and date. And I know there's a lot of Sony fans that push back on that. Why would they need to do that? Well, let's just look at the most recent, issues. Concord. Rumor has it it's nearly $500 million in the toilet. They had to refund the ones that they sold. They closed the studio that they purchased, which that was an amount of money, plus the money that was involved in salaries and the development costs in making the game. And then they canceled a lot of these other development, games as a service and development. All of that stuff adds up. So let's just say if it was a few $100 million on a couple of those, they're in the billions of dollars in the hole and have no way of recouping that with games that we could either, sell to or that they could sell to us, or that we can even play and buy microtransactions or whatever. So that's a black hole of money that they just basically threw out the window. Sure, it's probably better to close the studio or end the game at that point, but all in all, that's still lost money. And we're talking about a company that's $100 billion company, not $1 trillion company. So losing a few billion is going to feel a little, it's going to hurt a little bit more than it would for $1 trillion company. But $1 trillion company is still going to be somewhat concerned in those matters. But when they're not even a 30th of what the other company is, it matters even more. And if they're talking about buying these remasters that you already bought the previous generation and all they're doing is a graphical update, or maybe they do that hero lighting on the characters for like Horizon Forbidden West and stuff, is it really worth the 30 or 60 or however much they're charging for it? Which in a lot of cases they're charging full bulk price. They're kind of in a pickle. And I've said it, at the beginning of this generation, I would not be surprised if Sony winds up being acquired by Apple or Amazon. I just didn't think it would have to go down this way. I just thought that more so it would be Apple or Amazon really getting aggressive and wanting to step into gaming a little bit more assertively. And then that's how it goes down. But it seems like Sony is kind of bleeding money in the gaming space, and their customer base isn't buying the copies like they used to. They're not buying the 20 million copies of God of War like they did the previous generation. They're not buying the 20 million copies or 30 million copies of Spider-Man like they did in the previous generation. You got Helldivers 2 outperforming Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? And that's a game where I'm pretty sure the budgets are like for Helldivers is probably a 10th of what it was for Spider-Man, or maybe not a 10th, but it was probably a good bit lower than what Spider-Man's was, especially considering licensing costs for Spider-Man. So they're definitely in a pickle. The fact that the gaming media is silent or looking the other way, but yet they want to focus on Xbox, where Xbox actually has a roadmap that's going to carry them for the next 3 to 5 years easy. And probably what we find in the June showcase will carry for another 2 or 3 years worth of a roadmap. Yet we still don't have a gaming roadmap from Sony. I mean, sure, yeah, Ghost of Yotai this year, maybe Wolverine, the PC exclusive right now on the PS5 next year. Intergalactic maybe the year after. I don't know. It just feels like the building's on fire and the Sony fans are like, oh no, this is I can toast marshmallows. That's why it should be burning, as opposed to saying, let's get buckets of water and put this out, or let's call the fire department to help or something. It just feels like we're just standing there and looking at this thing burn, and then we want to blame Xbox. Oh, it's the Series S's fault. What does the Series S have to do with Sony mismanagement? Like all these times that they talk about mismanagement at Xbox. Oh, the director left, or this person left. A lot of your executives have left over at PlayStation, where nobody's talking about mismanagement. Oh, it must be fine. Oh, they cancel a bunch of games. Oh, it must be fine. Oh, they can lose $500 million on a game that only lasted 8 days. Yeah, it's fine. And we're still wearing or looking forward to a showcase for like 2, maybe 3 years now, to the point where they don't even put them in showcases. They put those types of games that they would put in the showcase in state of plays. Doesn't that like kind of send a message that maybe things are awry, or I wouldn't say as desperate, but they're definitely out of sorts. But what do I know? But I've rambled enough. I'm sorry.
No. This is what we were hoping for. This is a great conversation. Yes, it went a little longer than we would have liked, but the truth of the matter is that everything that you said, Fuzzy, and everything that I said, and of course Mav with a magnificent Mav rant that he's known for, is our questions that the community is asking, and it's not just us that should be asking it. It should be the gaming media, and they refuse to even address that there's an issue.